first time Luca Moretti heard the young waitress speak to his mother in Italian, he felt something in his chest shift. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, it was just a small, quiet movement inside him. The kind you almost ignore, the kind that doesn't ask for attention. But he didn't ignore it. The restaurant was warm that evening. Soft yellow light spilled over white tablecloths and polished glasses. Outside, late autumn pressed against the windows, dark and cold. Inside, everything felt careful, designed, controlled. He sat straight in his chair, suit jacket fitted perfectly to his shoulders. His phone rested face down beside his plate. He had silenced it, but he could still feel the weight of it. His company never really slept, neither did expectations. Across from him sat his mother, Elena. She looked smaller lately. Not fragile exactly, just quieter. Her silver hair was neatly brushed back, her pearl necklace resting gently against a simple black dress. She held herself with the grace she'd carried her whole life, but her eyes moved differently now, slower, sometimes searching. Luca watched her carefully, the way he did during these dinners. "Is the light too bright, Mama?" he asked softly. She smiled. "No, Luca, it's beautiful." She always said that. Beautiful. The silence. A young waitress approached the table with 2 glasses of water. She wore a red apron over a white blouse. Her dark hair was tied back neatly. There was something steady about her movements, not rushed, not careless. "Here you go," she said, her voice calm and warm. Elena nodded politely but didn't speak. Luca gave the waitress a brief glance, the kind he gave most strangers. Quick, polite, distant. He was used to people looking at him differently once they recognized him. So, the owner of Moretti Global Holdings, the Italian billionaire who had built luxury hotels from New York to Milan, the articles always used words like visionary, ruthless, disciplined. They never used the word son. He leaned slightly toward his mother. "You're comfortable?" "Yes," she said again. "Very comfortable." The waitress lingered for a moment as if sensing something unspoken at the table. Then she looked directly at Elena and said gently in soft Italian "Fa bisogno di qualcosa." "Signora, si ha bisogno di qualcosa." "Signora, si ha bisogno di qualcosa." Elena's head lifted. It wasn't a big movement, but it was sudden. Her eyes sharpened. They focused fully for the first time that evening. "You speak Italian?" Elena asked, her voice suddenly alive. The waitress smiled. "Yes, my grandmother is from Naples. Never let us forget where we came from." There was a softness in the way she said it, not rehearsed, not showy. Luca felt his fingers tighten slightly around the edge of the table. He had not even expected that. Elena's face changed. The faint tiredness in her expression eased. "Naples," she repeated, almost to herself. "I haven't been back in so many years." The waitress leaned in slightly, careful not to intrude, but close enough to be heard. "It's still beautiful, loud, full of life." Elena laughed softly. A real laugh. It startled Luca. He hadn't heard that sound in weeks. "You just described my sister," Elena said. The waitress laughed too, quiet and respectful. Luca watched them, watched how easily the words moved between them, watched how his mother's shoulders relaxed, watched how her eyes seemed to wake up. He cleared his throat gently. "Mama, would you like to look at the menu?" "In a moment," she said, still looking at the waitress. "What is your name, cara?" "Sophia," she replied. "Sophia," Elena repeated carefully, as if placing it somewhere important in her memory. "That is a beautiful name. Thank you." No stiffness, just 3 people standing in a small pocket of warmth inside a large, elegant dining room. Luca felt something he didn't expect. Jealousy. It surprised him. He was the one who brought his mother here every week. He scheduled the dinners, cleared his calendar, chose the restaurants carefully, made sure she had the best seat, the best service, the best everything. And yet in less than a minute, this young waitress had reached her in a way he hadn't managed in months. Sophia stepped back gently. "I'll give you both a few minutes." As she walked away, Elena watched her. She reminds me of home," Elena said quietly. Luca nodded. "That's nice." But his voice was tight. He told himself it was nothing. Just a moment. Just a language. Still, he couldn't ignore the way his mother's mood had shifted, the way her fingers rested more steadily on the table, the way she looked present. They ordered dinner. Sophia returned, speaking English to Luca, but slipping into Italian whenever she addressed Elena directly. "Come sta questa sera?" she asked softly while setting down bread. Elena answered in slow, careful Italian, not as fluent as she once was. Some words came with hesitation, but they came. Luca listened. He hadn't spoken much Italian at home growing up. His father believed in assimilation. English meant success. English meant power. Luca had followed that path without question. His mother had kept her accent, kept her recipes, kept her quiet homesickness tucked between folded linens and Sunday dinners. He realized now that he hadn't heard her speak her native language in years. Not like this, not with someone who understood. Sophia didn't rush her. She didn't correct her. She didn't fill in the gaps too quickly. She simply listened. Luca found himself watching Sophia more closely than he intended. Not because she was beautiful, though she was in a simple, natural way. It was something else. It was the patience. The way she bent slightly to hear his mother better, the way she repeated a word gently if Elena struggled, the way she touched Elena's hand briefly when she laughed, just a light human touch, nothing inappropriate, nothing dramatic, nothing inappropriate. Just kind. At one point, Elena reached for her water glass, but misjudged the distance slightly. Her hand trembled. Before Luca could react, Sophia steadied the glass calmly, placing it securely in Elena's hand without making a scene. "There you go," she whispered with Elena looked up at her with gratitude so open it made Luca's chest ache. "Grazie tesoro." "Thank you, dear." Sophia's eyes softened. Prego. Luca felt it then. That quiet shift again. He had spent years building towers of glass and steel, negotiating deals in rooms full of men who measured worth in numbers. He knew how to control a boardroom, how to close a contract, how to dominate a conversation. But here, in this small moment, he felt powerless because what his mother needed right now wasn't power, it was understanding. Dinner continued. The restaurant buzzed softly around them, glasses clinked, low laughter rose from nearby tables. But at their table, something gentle unfolded. Elena told a short story about her childhood in Florence. Sophia listened like it was the most important thing she'd heard all day. Luca listened too, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't interrupt. He didn't check his phone. He didn't guide the conversation he just watched. When dessert arrived, Elena looked tired but peaceful. Sophia placed a small plate in front of her. "This one is on the house," she said quietly. For a fellow Italian, Elena's eyes filled slightly. "You are too kind," she said. Sophia shook her head. "No, I'm just happy you're here." Luca looked at Sophia then, really looked at her. There was no calculation in her expression, no attempt to impress. She didn't seem to know or care who he was. And for the first time in years, that felt different. So as they prepared to leave, Elena held Sophia's hand briefly. "You speak like someone who hasn't forgotten," Elena said softly. Sophia smiled. "Some things are worth remembering." Luca helped his mother into her coat. He nodded politely to Sophia. "Thank you," he said, "of course." No recognition, no special tone, just simple respect. As they walked toward the door, Elena leaned slightly closer to Luca. "I like her," she whispered. "I can tell," he replied. Outside, the cold air wrapped around them. Luca guided his mother carefully toward the waiting car. But his mind wasn't on the evening schedule or tomorrow's meetings. It was on the sound of his mother laughing in Italian and the quiet way Sophia had brought that sound back. He opened the car door for Elena and paused for just a second before getting in himself. Because something inside him had changed tonight. He just didn't know yet what that change would ask of him. The next Thursday, Luca told himself he was only keeping a promise. His mother liked routine, the same restaurant, the same corner table near the window, the same quiet evening away from doctors' offices and medication schedules, and the careful rhythm their life had slowly become. It had nothing to do with the waitress. At least that's what he told himself. The car ride was quiet. Elena watched the city lights pass by like they were memories she couldn't quite reach. "Are we going somewhere special?" she asked. "Same place as last week, Mama," Luca said gently. She nodded. "The one with the girl?" "Yes." "The one who speaks properly," Elena added. He almost smiled. "Properly," she listens. That word stayed with him the rest of the drive. The restaurant hostess recognized them and led them to the same table. The lighting felt just as warm, the air just as soft. But Luca noticed something different this time. He was aware of the doorway, aware of footsteps behind him, aware of the sound of a familiar voice somewhere across the room. When Sophia finally approached, carrying 2 menus, she didn't seem surprised to see them. "Good evening," she said warmly. "Buonasera," Elena answered immediately, her face brightening in a way that made Luca's chest tighten again. Sophia smiled at her first. "How are we tonight?" "We are old," Elena replied with a small shrug. "But we're here." Sophia laughed softly. "That's the best, cheap place to be." Luca watched the exchange. He noticed how naturally Sophia adjusted her pace to Elena's slower rhythm, how she waited half a second longer before responding, how she leaned in just enough so Elena wouldn't have to strain her voice. These were small things. But Luca had spent his life studying small things. In business, details were everything. A pause in negotiation, a flicker in someone's expression, a hesitation in tone. He recognized precision when he saw it, and this was a different kind of precision. "What would you like to drink?" Sophia asked. Elena looked at the menu but didn't focus on it. "What do you recommend?" she asked in Italian. Sophia didn't rush. "The house red is from Tuscany," she said gently. "It reminds me of my grandmother's kitchen." Elena smiled at that. "Then we must try it." Luca nodded his agreement. As Sophia walked away, Elena leaned toward him. "She has good eyes," she said quietly. "Good eyes, she sees." Luca felt something uneasy stir inside him. "She's a waitress, Mama. It's her job to pay attention." Elena turned her head slowly to look at him. "No," she said softly. "It is her choice." He didn't respond. He'd always believed attention was currency. something you gave strategically, something you used when necessary. But Sophia didn't feel strategic. She returned with the wine and poured carefully. She offered Elena a small taste first, as tradition demanded. Elena took a sip and closed her eyes briefly. See, she whispered. Luca watched that moment closely. The way the tension in his mother's shoulders softened again, the way her fingers rested more steadily against the stem of the glass. There had been other waiters before, professional, polite, efficient. None of them had shifted the air, bound his mother like this. Dinner moved slowly. Conversations between mother and waitress drifted back and forth in gentle Italian. Stories about Naples, about Florence, about recipes and loud family gatherings and crowded balconies overlooking narrow streets. Luca listened, silent. At one point, Sophia asked Elena, "Do you miss it?" Elena took longer to answer than usual. "Yes," she said finally, "but you cannot miss what your son builds for you here." She reached for Luca's hand. He squeezed it automatically, but something in her voice lingered. Sophia didn't look at Luca when she responded. She kept her focus on Elena. "Sometimes both can be true," she said softly. That sentence stayed in Luca's mind long after she walked away. "Sometimes both can be true." Luca stood immediately to help her. "I can walk," she insisted gently. "I know," he said, "but I'll come anyway." When she disappeared down the hallway, Luca remained standing for a moment, then slowly returned to his seat. He felt strangely restless. Sophia approached with a small basket of fresh bread. "Is she all right?" she asked quietly. "She's fine," Luca replied. Sophia hesitated, then spoke carefully. "I hope you don't mind me saying she seems stronger this week." Luca looked up at her. "She's been tired," he admitted. Sophia nodded as if she already understood more than he'd said. "My grandmother had days like that," she said. "Some days were foggy, some days were clear. The word hit him, foggy. She has early memory loss," Luca said flatly. "The word hit him, foggy. I'm sorry." He shrugged slightly. "It's manageable, but it didn't feel manageable." Tea felt like watching someone slowly drift away while still sitting across from you at dinner. "She remembers Italy more clearly than last week sometimes," Luke added, surprising himself. "That's common," Sophia said gently. "The oldest memories stay the longest." He studied her face. "How do you know that?" She gave a small, almost embarrassed smile. "My mother is a nurse. I grew up around these conversations." There was no pity in her tone, no heavy sympathy, just understanding. Elena returned a few minutes later, walking carefully but independently. Sophia immediately adjusted her posture again, slipping back into warmth and ease. Luca noticed everything, and it unsettled him because this wasn't about money. He could hire private nurses, the best doctors, the most advanced treatments, but he couldn't buy the look on his mother's face when Sophia spoke to her like she wasn't disappearing. As the evening continued, Elena grew quieter again, not tired exactly, just slower. At one point, she struggled to find a word mid-sentence. She frowned slightly. Sophia waited. Elena tried again. "The balcony." "Aisle balcony?" Sophia offered gently. Yes, Elena's face lit up. "Il balcony." Luca swallowed hard. He hated that flicker of panic in his mother's eyes when words slipped away. He hated that he couldn't catch them for her. When the check arrived, Luca placed his card down automatically. Sophia picked it up without glancing at the name. She returned a few minutes later. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" Luca asked. "We're bringing her here." "I should be thanking you." She tilted her head slightly. "Why?" He didn't answer right away, because saying it out loud felt too vulnerable. For reminding her who she is, instead, he said, Make her feel comfortable." Sophia looked toward Elena, who was gazing quietly at the candle in the center of the table. "She makes me feel comfortable too," Sophia replied. That surprised him. "How?" Sophia smiled softly. "She talks to me like I belong somewhere older than this city." There was no flirtation in her voice, no hidden intention, just honesty. As they prepared to leave, Elena reached for Sophia's hand again. "You come from good people," she said. Sophia squeezed her fingers lightly. "So do you?" Outside, the air was colder than the week before. Luca helped his mother into the car, but this time his thoughts weren't just tangled. They were shifting. He realized something uncomfortable. He had spent years protecting his mother from discomfort, from inconvenience, from struggle. But maybe what she needed wasn't protection. Maybe she needed connection. And maybe that connection had walked into their lives wearing a red apron and speaking the language he had slowly let fade. As the car pulled away, Luca looked back through the restaurant window. He saw Sophia clearing another table, laughing softly at something a child had said. She looked ordinary. Not part of his world, not part of his circles or events or polished charity galas. And yet, somehow, she had reached the only person in his life who truly mattered. He leaned back against the leather seat. For the first time in years, Luca Moretti felt something he couldn't negotiate. He didn't know what this was becoming. He only knew he didn't want it to end.